What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Dude, check this out. Samsung just released all their new phones, man. The Galaxy S10, the Galaxy Fold, man. And you know what? Not everyone has money to spend, bro. I'm broke. We gotta buy older phones to make up for it, just to make ourselves feel better. And all these people are reviewing the Galaxy S10 and all these things, man. I'm gonna review the Galaxy S2, see how it holds up in 2019. Maybe I'll compare it to the Galaxy S10 once I buy it. But let's just take a look at it, man. And let me take you down a trip down memory lane. All right, I think I said that right. Back in the day, man, I owned probably like a Huawei U8120 or whatever that phone was, a super basic phone. It barely even ran Android. And some of my friends had the Samsung Galaxy S2 back in high school, and even like I think maybe middle school, I don't remember. And I was looking at them, I'm like, yo, you are so lucky to own a phone like that. My phone barely even turns on, bro. And they had a Samsung Galaxy S2, and that at the time was probably like owning a Ferrari in high school, all right? And just to think a couple years down the line, not even a couple, I'm talking like 8-9 years down the line, these things you can probably find for like $10-15. And just to see that depreciation in price is insane. And now when I hold this thing, I'm like, I wouldn't even give this thing to like my dog to use, man. This thing is so basic, but I don't want to take away what it brought and what it even like did throughout its history. The specific Samsung Galaxy S2 that I own, there were like too many variants of it. This one is a T-Mobile version. There was like an AT&T Skyrocket version. There were several different variants, but the one we're looking at right now is the T-Mobile variant, but it's still a Samsung Galaxy S2. It was released in 2011, which is pretty crazy. I mean, that was so long ago, but at the same time, I mean, it really wasn't. I mean, it's kind of in that middle ground. The weird thing is, though, this was released in August, so usually we see a lot of them released around February, at least the Galaxies. This one was released in August, so kind of a little bit of time ago. Surprisingly enough, this thing had a 4.52-inch Super AMOLED display, and what I'll tell you is, you can definitely tell it's AMOLED, but it's definitely not a super sharp panel. I mean, it's kind of in that middle, like of the road kind of thing. It's not horrible, don't get me wrong. It's still a Super AMOLED display, but the resolution is 480 by 800. It's 206 pixels per inch. And I think at this time, the iPhone 4 or 4S was released. And I'll definitely tell you the Samsung Galaxy S2's panel, I don't think it was as good as the iPhone 4S or 4's panel, but this panel was actually much larger than those ones. So maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. And looking around, you had capacitive buttons on the bottom. You had a front-facing camera, which is respectable, at least it had it. The micro USB port on the bottom, headphone jack. You also have a removable back with a removable battery and removable storage. So you can pop in a 64 128 gig SD card in it and be set. So that's really, really cool. And you can always get an expandable battery. And man, shout out to Samsung for putting in a removable battery at this time. I know they removed it later on, but this phone at least had it, so that is super, super cool. That kind of covers the outside and most of the major hardware. Let's go ahead and talk about the software for a second. So this thing was released with Android 2.3.5 Gingerbread, which isn't horribly slow, don't get me wrong. I mean, it was released a while ago, but the cool thing is it was upgradable to Android 4.1.2 Jelly Bean, which honestly is surprising because I think Ice Cream Sandwich was a pretty big update, but mine specifically went up to 4.1.2 Jelly Bean, so that is super respectable. I mean, that's still extremely outdated, don't get me wrong, but this thing got a couple versions of Android, and even at this time, there weren't a lot of phones that were being supported for that long, so shout out to Samsung once again, man. You guys thought I was gonna bash on this phone on this whole entire time, yeah? I know I'm like an Apple channel, but dude, I talk about Samsung and I give praise where it's due. Go back to my comparisons with the iPhones and the Samsungs. I always give Samsung so much props for what they're doing to just, I guess, the Android marketplace overall. Now, I went on a tangent there, dude. We're going to talk about the performance really quickly. So this thing was released. Now, I keep saying it was released. It only came with one thing. It had the Qualcomm Snapdragon 53 chipset, a dual-core CPU, an Adreno 220 GPU, and a whopping 1 gig of RAM. Now, jokes aside, I will say at that time, okay, when this thing was released, this thing was pretty fast, man. And I remember being there when I owned my whatever. I didn't even think I owned an Android phone. Maybe it wasn't even the Huawei one. It was probably like a Motorola one, the EX124. My friends were using this phone and doing things with it that I didn't even think was possible. And that just goes to show you how important and just, I guess, how vast history of Samsung is, especially with their Galaxy S series. I mean, this thing maybe didn't have the most amount of features, but I will say that at that time, I definitely wasn't saying to myself, man, this thing is super slow. The iPhones are way faster, this and that. I remember even at around this time I started seeing these, I think iOS 7 was released and many people's iPhones were actually getting slower, whereas the Galaxy S2 at the time was still pretty fast and pretty respectable. I didn't really see too many people complaining about it. I knew like 2 or 3, maybe 4 people who owned it at my school during the time. So in my opinion, I don't think the Galaxy S2 was a horribly slow phone at all at the time, but now, I mean, times have changed. I mean, apps are still getting updated. Sometimes I can't even download certain apps because you need Android Lollipop or newer. So that's definitely kind of sucks. So I think it's Android 4.4. I also don't remember. But regardless, in terms of performance, I mean, I don't want to go too deep into it. It'll open apps. It'll like, do what you need to do with it. It's not the fastest thing ever. I don't think you're expecting to see the fastest thing ever. But one interesting thing to note though, and I forgot to mention this earlier, but this thing is rootable and you can flash custom ROMs on it. There's many different custom ROMs for this thing. So I'll definitely recommend you, if you own this for some reason, just go flash a custom ROM on it, man. Even if it breaks, who cares? You can just buy another one for like $10. And even that might increase the performance a little bit. Sometimes you can flash a custom kernel on these things. And even though we're in 2019 right now, we have Android Q coming out very soon. Android Oreo on this thing will still be fine. Android Nougat will still be, dude, even Android Lollipop is much better than the Android Jelly Bean that you're going to be on this thing. And just to kind of even see what's going on with it, man, I would recommend you to do that. So that kind of covers the performance aspect, kind of what you're going to get if you own this phone now, which is kind of funny if you're actually owning it. But I kind of want to talk about the camera for a second, man. And this thing was released with an 8 megapixel camera. Really not the most jaw-dropping thing ever. I mean, I guess you can take photos on it. One interesting thing to note though is that you are able to shoot 1080p videos on it, so that is really, really cool. I'm glad they, didn't stick with 720p. You can shoot HD videos at 30 frames per second, and what I'll tell you is this is a camera. It'll get the job done. There's a lot of features within Samsung stock camera, so that is really, really cool. If you go do flash a custom ROM or something, you'll actually be eliminating most of those features, unless that specific ROM says like, oh, these features are added, or unless it's like another Samsung TouchWiz ROM. This phone specifically is one of those phones that had a lot of features in the camera app, and so did the Galaxy S3, Galaxy S4, Galaxy S5. All those phones have lots of features in the camera app, and that is something for some reason Apple just did not take note of. And with their iPhones, they just don't drop that many features in them, I'll be honest. In terms of the camera department, they drop a couple of them, whatever. I don't want to get too political here, but the Samsung Galaxy S2 at the time had a pretty decent camera, so I'll give it that, man. And the front camera is 2 megapixels, and again, it'll get the job done. I probably wouldn't recommend using it anymore, but it's okay. It'll get the job done. Surprisingly enough, the iPhone 6 that was released a couple years after this still only had like a 1.2 megapixel camera, so this technically had more megapixels than that camera. Not really saying much. Megapixels aren't everything, but kind of an interesting thing to note. Now, the last thing I kind of want to hit on is the battery life. So this thing was released with a 1850 milliamp hour battery, and what I'll tell you is it's definitely not that battery size anymore. The battery has definitely deteriorated over the 8 years that it's been alive. So this thing's battery life is probably like 1000 milliamp hours, honestly probably less than that. But the cool thing is about Samsung and this specific phone, the Galaxy S2, is that you are able to swap out the battery, so you can go put in a bigger battery size if you want to, or get the same size battery, just swap them out if you want to at your leisure. But what I'll tell you is, man, no matter what, the removable battery era that we had was amazing, and this phone was part of it, and I'll give it at least that, even though the battery life isn't good anymore, at least this thing had a removable battery, and that makes it go from like a 2 out of 10 to like at least like a 7 out of 10 right there, because you can just put a bigger battery in it. And I know a lot of people don't like it when I say that, but that's my opinion, and that's where I'm going to leave it at, man. Now, some other things to note, this thing, you know what, there's really not too much notable things to add. This thing, no fingerprint sensor, obviously, no Face ID, no AirDrop, no USB Type-C, nothing like that. But in 2011, man, what do you expect? I'll definitely say, and this is so important, at the time of its release, a couple years here, a couple years there, when I saw people owning this device, when I saw people talking about it, nobody was telling me that it was a horrible phone. Nobody was telling me it was so slow, this and that. However, going against my whole entire channel when I talk about iPhones and Apple, a lot of people were complaining about Apple and their iPhones at the time, mostly because of the software. Now, it's interesting because now a lot of people talk about how bad the software is on their Android phones, whereas iOS is super, super good. Well, there's still a lot of problems with it, no doubt, but nonetheless, a lot of people were hyping this phone up, and rightfully so. If I owned it in 2011, I would be the happiest girl ever. I would literally go out, download so many games on it, download so much stuff on it, and I would be super happy. But I was also super happy with my Motorola EX124 that ran Java, it didn't even run Android. So kind of a weird dynamic there, maybe if I owned the Galaxy S2, I would have never really liked iPhones, maybe never switched back, I don't know. But there's no point in looking back when we gotta look forward, bro. But what I'll tell you is, I have so much respect for the Galaxy S2. Is it still worth it in 2019? Probably not. I would recommend at least going for like a Galaxy S7, man. That's probably the lowest I would go. Those things are probably like $100 something. But if you currently still own a Galaxy S2, I would love to hear your opinion on it. Do you still use it? Do you hate it? Do you this? Do you that? Let me know in the comment section below, man. I want to hear your opinion. I want to hear your voice. But if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. That don't mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it'll mean so much if you guys could hit that. Also, check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel, all those links are linked down below. I would really appreciate if you guys could check it out, man. I'm also doing an iPhone SE giveaway. I'm giving away 4 iPhones. The first winner I'm picking next Sunday. or this Sunday for that matter. And I'm going to pick another one next Sunday and the next Sunday until I give away all iPhones to 4 different people. So the first link in the description should take you to that giveaway. Watch that giveaway video. It'll explain everything how to enter. It's completely free. I just want to show my love to you guys, bro. But that is pretty much it. But more importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. And hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.